had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to navigate, where to go or anything. When you're involved with all the different agencies, even inter-agency relationships like TRA, which is the housing, they have theirs. But then in order for you to get TRA, you have to get cash assistance. Okay, so the cash assistance requires you to go to Work First New Jersey. Work First New Jersey requires you to go to the Goodwill. Okay, and then Goodwill requires you to also go to, to go to a volunteer site that's in conjunction with that. All right, so then now you backtrack. So now in order for you to become desirable for the program or to even help yourself, you want to go to school for something, some kind of training, some kind of certification. So you do that instead of the work searches. Okay, so you go to school, okay, but you still have, and then hopefully you have enough hours where you don't have to do the volunteer site, or you get a job. Well, once you get a job, as if you're making in one paycheck more than your temporary cash assistance, then you get cut off for TRA because TRA requires you to have cash assistance. So if you get this job, and as soon as this job, and you turn in the paperwork that says that you work here at XYZ company and you're making this amount of money, then TRA is in it immediately. So now what if you're in a shelter when that happens? Or in my case, it was in the middle of the month. I just started working, and all of a sudden, the following month, I had to pay $950 for rent because they just dropped me in the middle of the month. It was like, oh my goodness, are you serious? So what people end up doing is, instead of growing to keep their housing so they don't go back to being homeless, is they get a quick little job. McDonald's, Burger King, waitressing, anything that will cause them to make less money so that they can hold on to their temporary rental assistance, but they don't get a chance to grow. When you're in a shelter home, 60% of your income from social services has to go to your shelter. So out of the $612 that I was getting, I was left with $100, $150, to take care of my kids for the whole month. So if it hadn't been for St. Vincent de Paul's, the Caring Center, and some of the other churches that I've accessed, I wouldn't have been able to pay my rent. We wouldn't have been able to have food.
What would you say was the hardest part in your journey so far?
Going to social services. That was the hardest thing. I remember walking out of there a few times and sitting in my mom's car, my dad's car that I borrowed, crying because I had no idea what was my next step.
Right, trying to get the information you need.
Right. It's hard. And I remember sitting in housing, and the lady told me, she said, well, Ms. McIntyre, I understand that your situation is very important to you, but everyone I see has a very dire or tragic or some type of emergency. And I looked at her like, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because we're only coming here because we're in an emergency situation. And everyone she sees has that emergency. So there was no way that they can actually help me. Right. I needed to go to someone who can, look at me as not being that number and see my situation. Connecting with well-informed people, people who specialize in homelessness, not just a broad spectrum of everybody's issues. If you need help about homelessness, you need someone that deals with just homelessness, and has the either compassion or at least the information. We were in a hotel for a month and a half. I do believe that if it wasn't for David Gober and the school board calling, that we would have been there longer, But we moved here in July, We moved here in July. And I moved into my new home October 15th.
Here?
Right, not, and it was 216 Kinsley. Yeah, in the middle street. Right. We moved in there in October 15. You know, and it was like one of my mom's greatest moments. I was so happy. You know, by that time I had 2 jobs when I moved there. You know, you had to, because once you got the job, they cut me off.
How did you find yourself here? How did you become homeless?
Well, I had breast cancer. At the time, I hadn't been diagnosed yet, but I was sick. And I had missed a lot of work. I didn't understand what was going on with me. And when I was diagnosed, I was also laid off or let go of my job because I wasn't there enough. And to get unemployment, I had to explain the fact that, well, I have breast cancer. And they said, due to the fact that it was nothing you did wrong, you can have unemployment. Well, the next thing I knew, when I did try to get another job, nobody hired me. I was 50 years old. I was 50 years old with breast cancer. Nobody's going to hire you. I mean, nobody wants to insure you. So I just realized that out of all of that time, in the 3 months, I only worked 3 months. Somebody hired me for 3 months, and I thought that they were going to call me. It was right the day before. I thought they were calling me for my evaluation to let me know that, yes, you're on board. They were there to tell me that I was being let go because they didn't want to insure me. I had no place to go once unemployment closed down because you can't depend on the welfare system. You really can't. When I didn't have any place to go, they got on the phone and they called they were scattered. All of these motels were scattered. And no one had a room until this one. Yeah, we could take one more. Supposedly I've got a very fast-growing cancer, and I got about a 2% chance of living 21 months to 24. And you're thinking, what do you do with that? I'm definitely not dying at this place. I mean, God bless it is the roof over my head, but I do not want to be here.
Mark, describe for me, will you please, where we are, where this room is, where you're living right now.
Well, I'm in the Travel Inn on Route 38 in Mount Holly. Social Services put me up here on January 31st. I had to put a hardship application in.
How it came to be that you're now homeless. How did that happen in your life?
Back in, oh my goodness, we're going back to 2007, 5 years ago. I was working for a betting company called Rockaway Betting, and the company went bankrupt. So they laid everybody off. So that was the beginning of it. And I was collecting unemployment. I've been renting a room for the past 9 years up until last June in Mount Holly because it was inexpensive. It was cheap and close to my children who were down the road in Mount Laurel. And what happened was Social Services the caseload got behind, and I ended up going to court to get evicted.
What's the way out of this difficult season?
I applied for Social Security to help me. I got an attorney last year because the process was taking so long. I know I needed an advocate. I'll have to pay him out of any amount I get for my back Social Security.
This has to come from the heart because we're trying to make this as real as it is for you, for those watching.
Yeah.
What's the most difficult part for you, Mark, being homeless?
Not being able to provide for my kids. They're struggling with their mother. Not being able to contribute financially. Not be able to get them stuff at Christmas. Not being able have self-esteem and self-worth. Mm-hmm. And I'd say that's the most difficult thing.
That's the most difficult.
Of all the things I have to go through, and as fearful as I am, and most of the time, because I'm always worried about, I'm going to be out in the street again. Right. Am I going to end up in the shelter?
Could you tell me how it came to be that you became homeless?
Sir, I was doing vinyl siding, and the ladder slipped out. I fell and got hurt real bad. I was in a coma 3.5 months, and nobody will hire me because I'm on SSI check, and you can't work on that check. I can't get a regular job because I get my check, If I go to work, I'll lose my check and my insurance. And I want to lose that because I need it.
So there's a system that's almost unbeatable.
Yes.
The most difficult thing for you living like this that you
Taking
wanna
the
share?
poop in the morning.
Privacy for going to the bathroom, and
Yep.
you say it's been 12 years now for you.
On the streets, yeah, 12
on
years.
12 years.
Yeah.
Stanley, how do you see turning this thing around where you could have your own home again? What do you see as the answer? What gives you hope?
I wake up in the morning, I'm alive.
Amen.
And I love to be alive.